Welcome back, everybody, to Weekly Wonder. I'm Logan with Tremont, and this week I'm speaking to you from underneath this really nice pine tree, and I'm looking around, and there is all sorts of cool stuff all around here. I'm finding like hickory nuts that have been chewed up and what looks like eaten because I can still see the tooth marks in the husk. There are some holes that look like they have been dug up out of the dirt by some animal, and just behind me is some wild animal poop, or as we call it, scat. And this little patch of the world is not unique. There are signs and tracks and traces of animals everywhere. This week we are inviting you to go on an animal tracking expedition where your goal is to find a nature mystery that an animal has left behind or created, and to investigate it and to come up with some interpretations or stories that explain what is going on. But first, I have a story for you. The other day, I was looking at my window and saw something that instantly got my attention. I was looking at the forest, and it was the forest in winter, which is a lot of grays and browns and trees with no leaves. The kind of things that your eye just kind of looks at and slides right past without even thinking about. But then I saw something that stood out. It was a tree with these bright colored, light colored branches. I had to go investigate. What was happening there? Outside, I saw that the reason why these branches were so light colored was that there was no bark on them. All the bark was gone. On a few of these branches, I could see where there was some bark left, and it looked like it had been peeled into these thin, long strips. Looking at the surface of the branches, I could see that it was smooth. Here and there, I could see a little bit of light markings, but it looked like someone had just peeled, like a banana, the bark off this branch. Looking around, I found a whole bunch of what looked like a ball of yarn on the ground. And looking closer, I saw that it was a ball of peels, thin strips of bark that had been wadded up. And then at the base of a tree, I saw a hole, looked like a perfect little animal home. And inside, I could see some of these thin strips of bark inside the hole. What was going on here? I started to make a list of possible explanations. Number one, maybe an animal was peeling this bark off the branches and taking it back to their home. Animals that I thought might do this would be squirrels, mice, chipmunks, even like flying squirrels. Number two, it could be some sort of animal that was actually eating the bark. Number three, it could be some sort of tree disease that was killing the tree, making the branches die. Four, it could be something else, something I hadn't thought of yet. But I wasn't sure about any one possible explanation. And this feeling of uncertainty happens all the time when we're tracking. One of my tracking teachers once said that the world is like a 10,000 piece puzzle, and at best you only have a few pieces in your hand at a time, and you're trying to put them together and see the whole picture. In other words, when we track, we're going to have to feel uncertain about what we're seeing. And uncertainty in learning may not be things that mix well for us. Feeling uncertain can make us feel really anxious, can bring up a whole bunch of negative feelings. Maybe we feel like we're doing something wrong, and that makes us feel bad about ourselves. Maybe we just give up and tell ourselves a story like we're not good at learning. We'll never be an animal tracker. So feelings of uncertainty can make people feel really anxious and uncomfortable. So this week, we're going to go on an animal tracking expedition, and we are going to be learning some techniques that will help us find and piece together and discover the stories that are happening all around us. And we're also going to be doing this just to practice being more and more comfortable with uncertainty. And we'll learn some techniques that help us deal with feeling uncertain. And then we'll also find cool stuff outside to share. So, Let's go tracking. All right, so now we are ready to go on our animal tracking expedition, which is just another way of saying we're going to go outside and look for tracks. So it's a pretty simple process. Let me break it down for you step by step. Step one, pick a place to go. Your yard, your street, neighborhood, local park, your schoolyard, but a place where there are animals living their lives and leaving signs behind, which again is most places. Bring with you a journal so that you can write down your observations and remember them. A camera if you want to take some pictures that you can either send to us or use for later reference. And a pro tip, it's a really good idea to take something that you can measure length with. So like a ruler or a measuring tape. Step two is look for stuff. So you may find evidence of animals eating things like acorns or parts of trees, leaves, different kinds of like hickory or walnuts, pine cones, all sorts of things that animals eat. So take a look for that. You may also find paths or trails. This is a trail that ran right through my yard to my garden. So look for places where animals are moving over and over again. You may also find clear footprints. I tend to find footprints in sand or mud, places where I know I can find really clear prints. And believe it or not, one of the best places that I've found to track are baseball fields. Lots of sand, lots of animals. You may also want to look at trees. And their bark have lots of sign. And weirdly enough, telephone poles can have lots of animal signs, whether it's scratch marks or here is where an animal that had just wallowed in some mud rubbed up against a telephone pole. Also, it's easy to think about only mammals, but insects too and invertebrates leave lots of signs, like on this leaf. And finally, when you're tracking, you'll just see some weird stuff. Like this is where an animal ran out of a river and crossed a road, and a wet trail was left behind. Step 3, ask questions. Lots of questions as you start to investigate more and more. Who did this? When did this happen? Where is this animal now? And you can ask specific questions about what you're seeing too. Like if you're looking at an acorn that's been eaten, did the animal eat the acorn right where it found it? Or did it take it someplace special to eat? I have a list of really useful and favorite tracking questions that I've made into a tracking question field guide that you can take with you on your animal tracking investigation. You can download it in the link in the description or subscribe to our newsletter. I think it'll be really helpful as you do your investigations. Then you're going to come up with what we call a short list. So a short list of could-bes. It could be a bobcat that walked on this trail. It could be a deer. It could be a fox. So make a short list of your possible suspects. And the last item on your list should always be something else. Your short list should always leave you open to new possibilities. And that's your short list. That's step 4, is to come up with your short list of suspects. And that's where we're going to end it this week. Next week, we'll talk about how do you narrow down and choose one item on your short list over another. But for now, we're just coming up with a short list of suspects. And we're going to leave it at that. And again, that might make us feel uncomfortable, feel like something is incomplete. But you should also give yourself credit, because out of all the infinite possibilities that made the mystery that you're looking at, out of the hundreds of animal species that live in your region, you narrowed it down to a list of like 4 or 5. That's really good. You should give yourself credit. You should be proud of the fact that you narrowed it down to a much smaller list of suspects. Once you have your short list and once you've gone on your animal tracking expedition, send it in to us at weeklywonder@gsmit.org, and we will feature it on our live stream. Include a picture either of the mystery or of your journal page, and include what is your short list. And then we can talk on the live stream about all the different possibilities that you came up with. And maybe we'll come up with a few more, or maybe we'll be able to narrow it down even further.